The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 974, coming to you on Monday the 25th of May, 2020. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, Get It Surveyed. But before getting into that topic, a few preliminary comments. Firstly, and as usual, my condolences go out to all families which have suffered recent bereavements. And I wish particularly to mention Canon and Mrs. Ulrich Jones, who laid to rest their son, Soka Jones, a few days ago. I know the family felt it hard, but as befitting someone who has endeared himself, especially to the younger population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it would appear that Soka Jones had a royal send-off. Firstly, his body was received in lavish style from abroad where he died, and I understand the funeral was a very moving affair. And my heart goes out to all the relatives of those persons who died as a result of the explosion at the gas station in Union Island last week. You know, death by fire is one of the most excruciating deaths one can have. And when it was announced that the proprietor of the gas station and two students were burnt, everybody felt, well, this is a terrible tragedy. But then we heard the very sad news that the proprietor had died and then the youngster had also died. The young lady who was also burned has gone off abroad for medical attention, and our prayers go with him. But my deepest sympathies to the people of Union Island, particularly those closely related to the deceased persons, on what will surely have been one of the worst tragedies to have hit the Southern Grenadines in a long time. On a happier note, belated Happy National Spiritual Baptist Day to all my fellow spiritual Baptists. The official National Spiritual Baptist Recognition Day was on the 21st of the month, on Wednesday. But then on Sunday there were the commemorations in all spiritual Baptist churches where a message was read by His Eminence Archbishop Melford Pompey, and for the first time in many years, a message was read on behalf of all the leading spiritual Baptist assemblies in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It was really a pleasure for me to come to understand that all the major archdioceses of spiritual Baptists, plus others, had come together behind Archbishop Pompey of the Spiritual Baptist Archdiocese to bring national greetings. And I want to congratulate Archbishop Pompey and all of the other Spiritual Baptist heads on whose behalf Archbishop Pompey spoke. I refer, of course, to Archbishop Johnny Jones, the head of Mount Carmel, Bishop Devon Oliver, the head of the Spiritual Baptist Organization, and between the Spiritual Baptist Archdiocese, Mount Carmel, and the organization, we have about 75% of the Baptists in St. Vincent. But that is not all. Bishop Roban lent his support to the venture. Bishop Godfrey Haywood of St. Joseph's lent his support, and Bishop Elsa Young of Mount Halibut also lend her support. So my congratulations to Archbishop Pompey, Archbishop Jones, Bishop Oliver, Bishop Haywood, Bishop Roban, and Bishop Young. Were it not for the COVID disturbances, we would have had the usual procession of worship on Sunday, followed by a mass service of celebration. But because of the COVID, it was decided to cancel the normal annual Spiritual Baptist March and service, and to have the combined message read in all Spiritual Baptist churches during the services yesterday. So once again, my congratulations to all of the leaders, and let us hope that the Spiritual Baptists of St. Vincent and the Grenadines would continue to grow in grace. Then finally, let me hope that we continue to pray, not just for ourselves, but for persons all over the globe who suffer from the ravages of COVID-19. We heard the sad news on the international airwaves that Brazil has now become the country with the second largest number of reported infections, verified infections, which is doubly sad when you consider that the president of Brazil says that he does not believe in COVID. All we have is a bit of a flu. And he personally has refused to take measures for his own protection, wears a mask only now and then, mixes and mingles with crowds, and has his supporters railing against the imposition of lockdown measures in various parts of Brazil. But the number of deaths there have been frightening, second only to the United States of America. And that the USA is a country especially near and dear to us because so many of our people have settled and live in the United States of America. They are nearing 100,000 deaths and well over 1.5 million infected persons as a result of the COVID. So let us continue to pray to Almighty God, and even as we thank the Lord for having spared us so far, let us not take anything for granted. Let us continue to be watchful. Let us continue to pay heed to all the advice we have been given by our health officials as to defensive measures to take, particularly wearing masks and keeping our social distance and avoiding crowds. Excuse me. And now to the topic for the day. Get it surveyed. Well, naturally, by it I mean the land. St. Vincent and the Grenadines still has the ancient system of conveyancing by deed rather than the modern techniques of conveyancing by registration. The implications of conveyancing by deed is that land can be transferred from one person to another without necessarily having the land surveyed. However, registration is a system in which every piece of land in a country is the subject of a survey plan, so that when land is to be transferred or subdivided, one has a ready frame of reference. Therefore, if you were living in Barbados, for example, land is transferred by the registration system, even in St. Lucia. So that when a piece of land is sold or passes from one person to another by will, a reference to that land is signaled by a particular reference to a parcel, to a survey plan of that land. Under land registration, sometimes called the Torrens system, from the name of the gentleman who really perfected this technique in Australia many, many years ago. Under registration of land, passage of land by registration, the whole country is surveyed, every parcel of land. Under the deed system, as we have here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, surveying is not compulsory. And very often you come across a deed, in fact, the majority of deeds registered at the registry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are deeds without a plan number on them to indicate with precision the boundaries of the land which is subject to that deed. For certain purposes, the law requires a survey plan. For example, if one is going to apply to the High Court in this country for the registration of a possessory title, preceded by a declaration of possession, the application must be accompanied by a recent survey plan. And by recent, the law defines the plan as being a plan of not more than 3 years old. Most lending institutions require a plan for any parcel of land that they propose to take as security for a loan of money. And the reasons for that are obvious. If a lending institution, be it a bank or a credit union or an insurance company or building and loan or cooperative society, is going to lend money on the security of a piece of land, they have to know exactly what is the location of the land, what are the boundaries of the land, which means that they have to have a plan for the land. And this is so because you will recall that if somebody uses a piece of land as security for a loan of money and takes out a mortgage on that land, and the mortgage is not repaid, one of the remedies open to the lender, that is the lending institution, is to sell the property which is used as security to get back their money. But if you're going to get the right to sell a property, piece of land, because somebody borrowed money on the security of that land or that property and didn't pay back, and you're going to advertise that property for sale in the newspapers, you're going to have an auction sale, or you're inviting people to tender, to send in a bid for the land, you have to know precisely what it is you are entitled to offer for sale. So that if you go for a mortgage these days, in the old time days, they were not too fussy about that, but certainly in modern times, if you go to the bank, credit union, ask for a mortgage, one of the things you have to take with you is not only your title deed or whatever document you have to show that you have the right to mortgage that piece of land. You have to have a plan, a recent survey plan for that piece of land. Otherwise, the banks will say, no, we want to see exactly what we are getting as security. And it isn't good enough for the land to be described as in the old time days, bounded on the north by lands of Henry, whatever, bounded on the south by a stream, bounded on the east by lands of the heirs of so-and-so, bounded on the west by lands of so-and-so, or howsoever otherwise the same may be butted, bounded, and described, and so on and so on. You have to be able to show, with reference to a registered and valid survey plan, exactly where the boundaries of that land are and its dimensions. Now, you can't go to the bank with a sketch that was drawn some years ago and was not an officially registered survey plan. You have to have a plan that is registered at the Lands and Surveys Department, and a fairly recent plan at that. You can't go to borrow money in 2020 with a plan drawn in 1962, where encroachments may have taken place, boundary markers may have become dislodged, other typographical features of the land might have changed. For example, you have land slippage. You have the nature creating little drains and streams where none existed years ago. Or you have what were formerly streams having dried up. So you cannot go with an old plan to an institution. You have to get it surveyed afresh and go with a reasonably recent plan drawn by either a licensed land surveyor or an authorized land surveyor. So the person who signs the plan must be somebody who has authority under the Land Surveyors Act to sign plans. And for registration, plans have to be signed by the chief surveyor and get a plan number. Very often you have a plan and it says this plan supersedes former plans. In other words, there were plans before and the new plan has drawn over the boundaries. So you cannot rely on the old plans which have been superseded, but you rely on the new, fresh plan. Now, if you have a biggish piece of land and you intend to share it up among your children, so you're going to give them their own deeds of gift, you can't go on the land and say, okay, well, Tom, you are getting from this breadfruit tree down by the gully, and Mary, your piece will start at the gully and go up to where that mango tree is planted, and Elizabeth, your land will go now from the big stone down the road, and no, that is ancient procedures. You have to get a surveyor, take the surveyor to the place, show the surveyor roughly where you want the boundaries to be. You're giving this piece to this child, another piece, and so on. And the surveyor would produce a plan drawn in your instructions. Of course, the surveyor has rules which he or she has to follow. If the land is boundary with somebody else's land, and practically every piece of land has some neighbor, the surveyor has to give a notice to the neighbor of the date and time when he or she intends to come to do the survey. Therefore, the giving of notice to neighboring landowners is a standard feature of land surveying practice. But this idea of dividing land by word of mouth can't work. You have to get it surveyed. Get in touch with a surveyor. There were times when the most reliable surveyors you had in St. Vincent and Grenadines, I'm talking about 30, 40 years ago, were Bassie Alexander and Inky Williams. Those fellows were good, and they were in constant demand. Everybody wanted them to go and survey a piece of land. Land surveying, of course, is not an easy occupation. I mean, there are times when you have to survey a piece of land in an arid mountainside full of go-go trees, rocks, couch, and other hazards of nature which made it extremely difficult. So that surveyors don't have it easy. Sometimes the terrain is very hostile, but they have a job to do, and somehow they have to manage to do the job. Final thing I want to say about surveying. Don't think you're going to remove a boundary mark placed by a surveyor and put it somewhere else. And the same surveyor or any other surveyor can come and realize this mark has been shifted deliberately. Because when that surveyor uses his or her instruments and places a boundary mark called a monument on a spot, it is inch perfect, and he has all the figures written on a piece of paper which are lodged in the surveyor's office, so that years after that surveyor has passed on, even though that boundary monument has been removed, another surveyor can come using the same figures and values and pinpoint the exact spot where the original monument had been placed. Surveying is an exact science. So before you do anything with land, have it surveyed. If you're going to buy land, make sure you get a plan to see exactly what you are buying. Don't rely on somebody showing you where boundaries are, unless they are concrete fences, fences and other things. Get a plan. Because the day you set foot in a bank to say you want to borrow money, you're going to, where is your plan? So if you're going to do anything with land in terms of changing it up, make sure you have a plan for the land. That is what land surveyors are there to do. Use their services. You want to recheck a boundary? Use the service of a land surveyor. You think somebody is encroaching over your boundary? You say the boundary is here, the neighbors say no, it is there. You all get a surveyor to straighten the problem out for you. Don't pull cutlass at one another. So the bottom line, get it surveyed. All right? All right, well, that is all from this program of the edition of The Law and You. I am happy to tell you that you can now find The Law and You on YouTube for those who are interested. It takes a bit of a searching, but the programs, progressively the station is putting more and more of the ancient programs on YouTube, and these modern programs, this one, will be on YouTube in a few days' time as well, for which I'm extremely thankful, grateful to Mr. McLeish and his staff for making it possible for The Law and You to now reach a wider audience in more permanent form. Okay? Well, until next week, Monday, DV, when I'll be of further service to you, here is hoping that we will have a pleasant week and that the good Lord will continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.